Welcome to Rich World, where we uncover the extraordinary journeys of those who built empires from nothing. Today, we dive into the life of Hans Wilsdorf, a poor boy who created Rolex, the ultimate symbol of luxury. This is a tale of heartbreak, relentless grit, crushing failures, and soaring triumphs that will keep you glued till the end. Picture a child in 19th century Germany, orphaned and alone, rising to redefine time itself. Let's begin. In the quiet town of Kulmbach, Bavaria, 1881, a newborn Hans Wilsdorf, born to Anna and Johann, a modest ironmonger family. Life seems simple, filled with promise, but fate is unkind. As a toddler, Hans clings to his father as his mother's coffin is lowered, her sudden death leaving a void. At 12, tragedy strikes again. His father dies in an accident, orphaning Hans and his siblings. Relatives take charge, locking their inheritance in a trust, inaccessible until adulthood. Or sent to a stern boarding school in Coburg, Hans sits alone, studying fiercely. The strict environment hardens him, but loneliness gnaws. He excels in English, French, and math, whispering to himself, "I must rely on myself," vowing to survive despite his losses. At 19, Hans boards a crowded train to La Chaux-de-Fonds, Switzerland, clutching a job offer from Cuno Corten's watch firm. In a cramped office, he sorts pearls and inspects watch movements for 80 francs a month. His hands tremble from long hours, but his eyes gleam with curiosity. Traveling Europe, he visits jewelers, studying bulky pocket watches while dreaming of wristwatches dismissed as feminine trinkets. At night, homesick, he writes letters in multiple languages, poverty weighing heavy. Saving every coin, he dreams of something bigger, his early struggles forging a steely resolve. In 1903, Hans, now 22, steps off a ship into bustling London, eyes wide with ambition. The city's energy excites him, but its harshness tests his resolve. In a tiny shared flat, he counts pennies, skipping meals to save. Working at a watch company, the repetitive tasks stifle his ambition. Meeting Florence Frances May Craddy, his future wife, brings warmth to his lonely world, sparking hope. In 1905, with £1,000 in borrowed funds, he and his brother-in-law, Alfred Davis, found Wilsdorf and Davis. In a cluttered workshop at 83 Hatton Garden, Hans encases Swiss movements in British housings. Jewelers reject early batches, shaking his confidence. Working late by candlelight, he faces delayed suppliers and dwindling funds, muttering, "What if this fails?" Yet, he sketches smaller watch designs, betting on wristwatches when others scoff. On a foggy London omnibus in 1908, Hans whispers Rolex, a name short, elegant, and universal. Registering the trademark, he faces ridicule. Wristwatches for men? Absurd. Investors doubt him, and faulty watches cost thousands, pushing him near bankruptcy. In 1910, a Swiss lab tests a Rolex wristwatch, earning the first-ever Swiss certificate of chronometric precision for a wristwatch. Hans's heart races with pride, but in 1914 at London's Kew Observatory, Rolex achieves Class A precision, stunning critics. World War I erupts, halting Swiss supplies and raising taxes to 33%. Hans lays off workers, his heart heavy, his orders vanish. Becoming a British citizen in 1911 helps navigate restrictions, but he boldly declares, pocket watches will disappear, clinging to his vision amid chaos. In muddy trenches, soldiers fumble with pocket watches, proving wristwatches' practicality. Hans's foresight gains traction. But post-war, in 1919, punitive British taxes force him to relocate Rolex to Geneva. The move is chaotic: new factories, new struggles. Renaming the firm Montreuil's Rolex SA in 1920, he faces an economic recession, with sales plummeting. In a workshop lit by oil lamps, Hans sketches a waterproof watch case, murmuring, "Like an oyster." In 1926, he unveils the Rolex Oyster Waterproof and Dustproof. Critics call it a gimmick, but Hans is determined. In 1927, British swimmer Mercedes Gleitz wears an oyster across the English Channel. After 10 hours in icy water, it ticks perfectly. Daily Mail headlines scream the triumph, boosting sales, though Hans reinvests every penny. The Great Depression cripples luxury sales in the 1930s. Hans doubles advertising, betting on brand loyalty, a risky move. At home, he and May share quiet moments, her support steadying him, though their childless marriage aches privately. In 1931, he tests the perpetual rotor, a self-winding mechanism. Early failures cost thousands, but he refines it relentlessly. Explorers wear Rolexes in harsh conditions, building buzz, but Hans pushes for perfection. In 1941, Swiss authorities investigate him for alleged Nazi sympathies, a baseless smear. Cleared, he's shaken, but resolute. Reading pleas from Allied POEs in German camps, he offers Rolexes on credit, writing, "Pay when the war is over." Over 3,000 watches ship, lifting soldiers' morale. Wartime shortages cripple production, with factories indirectly bombed through allies. Hans rations materials, barely keeping Rolex afloat. In 1944, May's death devastates him. Sitting alone, clutching a ticking Rolex, he channels grief into purpose. Creating the Hans Wilsdorf Foundation, transferring all Rolex shares to fund charity and innovation. In 1945, he unveils the Datejust, the first self-winding chronometer with a date window, a global hit. In the 1950s, Rolex adorns world leaders and adventurers. Hans, now a legend, lives modestly. On July 6, 1960, at 79, he takes his final breath. His legacy endures. Rolex, a billion-dollar icon, privately run by his foundation. Hans Wilsdorf's journey from orphan to icon shows that no loss or failure is final. His grit, innovation, and heart-built Rolex against all odds. On Rich World, we celebrate such stories because they remind us, with vision and persistence, you can master time itself. What's your takeaway from Hans's epic rise?